Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 195. My name is NBZ and I'm once again joined by Bally. Hey Bally, how's it going?
I'm feeling good because, you know, it's nice when you've waited 21 years for a sequel to a game that you're very fond
The original
of.
game can drink and drive and do whatever the hell it wants now. It's now had a son, a wee baby son.
Yes, the original game is now a grandfather. And yes, it's a nice feeling when you think that game is never going to happen again, and you know it actually happens.
Yeah, it's like F-Zero is dead. He's never coming back. But maybe they'll do new F-Zero X, or something like that. Because of course that's what Nintendo would call it. It's just.
They've stuck it into a game in Nintendo Land. They've done tracks based on it from Mario Kart, and now it's like, yeah, it'd be nice if
Captain Falcon is popular as ever in Smash Brothers. That knee, that Falcon knee. Gotta love it.
Knee.
But hello, everybody. We're here. Obviously, pretty clear what we're going to be talking about on this episode. But yes, we're back to talk about video games and Nintendo and stuff going on in the world. And Bally, what we're doing? What we're talking about today on today's show?
First segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. Second segment, we've got some of your emails. And the third segment, there's a little bit of news. Nintendo dropped the news on a brand new weird game called Game Builder Garage that we might have a little talk about, and also they dropped some more financials which are phenomenal as ever, so we're going to touch on those as well.
It's boy, I was just thinking about this, right, of like I think the last year they sold like twice the Wii U's lifespan. It's just like, Jesus, dude.
I think Animal Crossing alone sold like twice the Wii U's.
Like close to triple the Wii U's. We're getting there with some of these pieces of software. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Let's kick it off, Bally. As you mentioned at the top of the show, it's been a long time coming, right? Pokémon Snap, I think was your first N64 game, right?
My first N64 game, yes. Back in, I think it must have been 2000.
Yeah, and so you have a very special tie to this franchise. I mean, we both love Pokemon, of course, but Pokemon Snap in particular, it's one of those games where I think on the Wii U, we both talked probably a lot on this show about that would be a perfect fit because it's kind of a camera. Remember with Game & Wario, how they had like that mini game that E3 people were talking about where, you could turn the gamepad around and it would like view the entire world almost by like moving it around. That kind of had the vibe for me for what Pokemon Snap could have been on Wii U, and yet they didn't do it there. They've done it obviously in a way here which probably will end up being way more successful because it's the Switch, it's more popular, all that stuff. But how are you feeling now that Pokemon Snap has returned and you've played it?
I mean, I know a lot of people were clamoring on Wii U and a system like maybe 3DS or something that they could have changed the formula in some meaningful way, but that original formula, having played this game, is actually, in my view, very strong. And I like that they kind of stuck to the system they had before, which is essentially a Disney ride on tracks with a bit of interactivity. And it's really not much more than that. It's very basic stuff when you actually break it down. But what I always dreamed about for the series, more so than any new play controls or anything, was more locations, more Pokemon, and I think that this game really delivers on those ideas because the original game, maybe one of its downsides is that you play through the level and then you play through the level again and the level is exactly the same, and there's like 8 or 9 levels, and sure, you learn secrets in each of those levels and there's development a bit, but you are ultimately playing exactly the same level again. One of my favorite things about this one is the idea is that the levels themselves, not just the Pokemon, level up and evolve. Exactly. And combine that with like nighttime versions of the levels, I think it actually gives the game a much more longevity in a way that doesn't feel overly forced and fake for me personally. But I absolutely love it because of that. And I think the locations just look fresh and incredible, and it's just a really lovely world to be in. Like, this is Pokemon looking at its absolute best.
Yeah, it definitely puts Game Freak to shame in some senses, right? When you look at what another company can do with this franchise visually. And that may be unfair to some degree because, of course, this game is completely on rails. So they have total control of where everything will be, what your eye will be able to see, and those types of things. And so the limited scope of it, right? But even then, like, there are, parts of modern Pokemon games you look at and you're like, well, I mean, this still kind of feels like a 3DS or like a handheld game in a lot of ways. And this certainly doesn't, right? Like, it feels like a full console experience in terms of the visual aesthetic of it.
Yeah, totally.
And so for me, it's interesting because I never played Pokemon Snap. You, for my birthday one year, sent me on the Wii, back when you could gift people games digitally,
Such
a
great
feature...
function.
Which for some reason they just got rid of totally, which all still baffles me. It's Nintendo, they take away things that were good, and then they decide, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I played a bit of it back in the day. I remember taking a screenshot, I think, of a Moltres or something, and messaging that to you on the Wii chat function where you could send envelopes to people with images in it. Certainly, we've come a long way since then, but... I didn't really play the whole thing, and I was like, okay, this is cool, but I didn't really get into it. And so I came into this being like, all right, well, let's see what this Pokemon Snap thing is about. Will I like it? Will I not? And I come out of it, it's okay. I think it's good. I'm not, obviously, I don't have the nostalgia tie to it like you do, and so I'm not going to be over the moon for Pokemon Snap. But it was enjoyable, if a little... I think by the end, by kind of like 10 or 11 hours, which I think it took me to finish it, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this, right? I think at the beginning, I felt the pull of, ooh, I should fill out this entire Pokedex, and I should like get all four-star versions of these Pokemon. And like I was, toying a lot with the photos and like making edits of them and that type of thing, and saving them and being like, I'm going to take my time with this and really go through. And eventually I was like, well, there's a lot of these levels. There's a lot of images to take. There's a lot of going through them again, and I didn't really stick to that pattern as I continued. I was more like, all right, let's just get to credits. Like, I'm kind of done with this now. So I don't know how you felt about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think they really fixed the biggest issue with the first game, which was there's hardly any levels and they are identical. And this game actually throws way more levels at you, has often 2 to 3 levels per level. And on top of that, night versions with their own 2 to 3 levels. Like if you're counting every level individually, within each level, there's probably like 40, 55 levels.
Variations at the very least.
Variations, which is obviously very generous. And yeah, if you are someone like Pokemon, there's a very hardcore community of Pokemon fans.
You don't say.
And if there are people who are like, I have to get every star of every Pokemon, there's loads of secret stuff in this game that I've just been like dipping into YouTube videos after the post game and kind of being like, oh, that's cool, I'm gonna go try that, and going back to the
like
levels.
I feel it's one of those really interesting things where this game feels like such a game of that era in some of these ways, where like. The game doesn't really teach you anything. The game sees it fit to spend 5 minutes teaching you how to throw an apple, right?
It's very chatty game. Like, my God, it is so chatty. But
it feels like in the wrong ways because there are moments where you're like in the game and you're like, well, I don't really understand how this flute works, or I'm not really sure, like, what do I do to get this Pokemon to do something different?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like there are very, like, secret hidden things that call back to that era of both Pokemon and video games, where you just kind of had to ask your friends about it, or in this day and age look it up on the internet to find out what is the esoteric bullshit you need to do to get this thing to evolve into a Gyarados, right?
Yeah. It's one of those really cool things, and on a side note, evolution is one thing they've taken away from the first game. Again, that was one of the best things of the first game, that for whatever reason they've just decided, nope, Pokemon aren't going to evolve in this game, because that was a really cool aspect. But what's interesting about the first game was, if at the time when you looked something up online, there wasn't videos and stuff, when you looked up, I remember doing this, how do you get muck in the first game? And there's like a specific thing, you need to throw the Pestable at this Grimer and do it like 5 times and it would turn into a muck. And I would read about it, but you wouldn't fully see how it's done. And then so actually going away and doing it yourself, there was a real satisfaction to, oh, that's what like Grimer evolving into Muck looks like. I'll take a picture and that looks really cool. And there's like a satisfaction in that. I can appreciate that just looking up a video on how to do something and then replicating it yourself maybe arguably loses a little bit of that magic. But to their credit, there are actually very minor spoilers for the end of the game. I'm just going to mention for 30 seconds. So warning now.
Okay.
There are like actual legendaries in this game that are like secrets in the level, and there's actually 10 in the whole game, which is awesome. And
Wow, okay.
I've been going back to levels and getting them. So spoiler wise, the two that I've gotten so far, shall I say their names or shall I just leave it? I'll just leave it.
Yeah.
There are 10 legendaries in this game across 10 different levels, and there are very specific things you have to do to see them. And I was of a mind when I finished the game, like, I'm going to get all 10. And I got the first two, and then I was kind of like, this is going to be hard. I think I'll do this later.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I was kind of burned on, not burned. I've played about 17 hours of this game, I want to say.
Wow, okay.
I've really gone back to the earlier levels and gone through, I managed to get Heracross fighting Pinsir, and I got some really things just by sheer working it out and throwing not Pestiballs, it was Illuminables, sorry, and the fluff fruit and your flute, and working out those things and getting some satisfaction out of that. But there is some really intricate stuff here that I just think is so difficult to actually work out, that is really going to be rewarding for the people who really want to try and uncover every single last leaf of a level, because there's a lot. These levels are dense when it comes to the number of things you can do and the different poses that Pokemon can do, and all that variation seems like such an upgrade from the first game, which is awesome.
Yeah, in some senses, it's really cool that stuff is in there. I wish it was surfaced a little better. I mean, in some senses, right, you have the request system, which gives you hints towards what you need to do.
Right. I quite like that. Yeah. I've not used it enough, to be honest.
Yeah, totally. And I think that probably if I was to go back to it, I would have to kind of dig into there and be like, oh, okay, this is what I should be looking out for in this area in order to find a thing I wouldn't find otherwise, right? Because on the base path, it's fun and interesting, especially the first time through a level. It's exciting because there's so many new Pokemon and you're taking as many pictures as possible. But then I feel like if you're trying to figure it all out on your own, it gets to a point where you're just replaying the same level again and again. And if you don't figure it out, nothing new happens, and you come out the other side having not gained many experience points, and therefore your level up doesn't go as much, and you just kind of keep going in a circle. I feel like if I was to do that, I think that would happen to me, basically, if I wasn't to look stuff up on the internet, which I think is a little frustrating in order to see the really, Heracross fighting Pinsir. I didn't see that. I don't know how to do that, right? And how do I get that working? I don't know. Maybe I'd go through that level 6 times, and I still don't know how it works, right?
I think getting from level 1 to 2 is quite straightforward. As long as you take basically a picture of every Pokemon you see, even the obvious ones, more or less you can get from level 1 to 2 fairly easily. Or you might be a few points short and need to go back and replay it once. I do agree that there are some levels getting from level 2 to level 3 can be really tricky, because what did I do? I found a way of getting the Venusaur to it has a standoff with the Arbok, and then the Arbok scares Venusaur, and then Venusaur appears at the end of the level on this water area in the jungle, and you get some really good shots of Venusaur there. So I was figuring out little things here and there, but there are so many secrets that I didn't work out, and I like that the game is challenging in that level, that you can't just play through a level and work it out all first time. And I love the hint system that it is kind of, making it trickier and hinting, hey, maybe if you just try doing this sort of thing, or have you seen these tracks that lead to this thing? Maybe if you threw a fluff fruit, So I like that there is that secret and mystery that makes the world actually feel a bit more alive. It feels... The first game felt like a very rigid Disney level. This feels, as rigid as it is, it doesn't... I should say Disney ride level. As rigid as this game is, the world does feel a bit more alive, and there are more. It's just because they increased the number of variables, to be honest. And
totally, the different levels and the way that you can see different things in different places, right? The jungle, I think during the day has the Ambipoms, and then at night the Lipards running across the branch at the beginning, right? It's similar animations, but they're changing the Pokemon out, and then you have the hidden things in the trees, and then there's a Swampert and a pond, and it does make it exciting to get to that next level. I think sometimes it's just okay, well, how do I get enough points on this area to get to that next part? And I think that might be where the kind of grinding to some degree comes in, which I wouldn't necessarily call it that because it's a very kind of chill game. But yeah, it's one of those things that for me, going back to this, if I was to and fill out the Pokédex and all that stuff, would be a bit trickier, I think. But still, like, valuable for the people who like it. And that's the thing, right? This game really is built, I think, for a lot of people who grew up with this game. And if you didn't, I think you'd probably have a bit of a trickier time getting into it, because there's simultaneously loads here and also not a lot at all, right?
Yeah, it's definitely both in weird ways.
Yeah. How do you feel about this new system of the star ratings and different star rankings and the Pokemon having different poses sometimes? I found it very confusing, but also, like...
It is initially, I agree.
I think it's still confusing. By the end of the game, I still didn't understand it, right? Like, so, for example, there's a Bouffalon in this first level at the end, and I took a picture of it, and I took another picture of it. And these two pictures back to back, they look pretty much identical when I go to Professor Mirror, and one of them is 3-star, one of them is 2-star. I have no fucking idea why, and there's no clarity on that. The game doesn't tell you, and again, like, this is maybe part of that kind of secret mystery, element of the game, but
it's basically just stages of an animation. So if an animation happens and you take a picture during the animation, there is a digital point where the animation transitions from a 1-star to a 2-star that visually looks the same. That
would make sense for the 1-star to 2-star, but this one was the Bouffalon. It was basically just like where it was, and one of them was 3-star and one of them was 2-star, which means neither of them were the default animation, but something else was happening. And that's where I found the trickiest stuff was, okay, sometimes you'll throw a fluff fruit at a Pokemon and it will, like, that's generally the easiest way to get a 2-star. For the most part, 2-star ones are, you threw a fluff fruit at them and they reacted, they got hit by it.
Yeah.
So often those shots for me had a fucking apple in the face of a Pokemon as I was taking the shot. Or it could be that they're eating it. And then usually the third or the fourth ones are the ones where it's a little weirder, a little more esoteric. Either it's an animation that you can only get within one small window of time, or it's something else that I never figured out, because I don't know how much the Illumina balls affected it, or how much the fluff fruit affected it, or the music. The music was one that I played a bunch through levels and it never seemed to do anything, and I didn't.
Not once.
Maybe I think once when I went past that Machamp in the kind of water level.
In the first game, the music was a poker flute, and the poker flute obviously links to the games as it's the way of waking up Snorlax. So it's clearly the thing that you do in those games to wake up Pokemon. I don't think they make that clear enough, because there's like slaking that will roll over when you play the flute, and like also roll over when you throw. If you do the flute with a fluff fruit throwing at its back, it'll like fully turn around and you'll get this traditional like slaking pose. So like in terms of the poses and the stars, I see your flaws with it. I also think the upside is that it gives them a lot more scope for these Pokemon to be doing very different things. And then because in the original game, and it's the same with this game, the only images that are saved are the top images that you take and any photo that you manually add to your album. So
yes, and I actually like the ability to like slightly adjust them after you've taken them. So one of the first ones I got was a Swanna, I think, this one Pokemon, flying past the camera. And what I did was I just like zoomed out a bit, moved it across, centered it, and saved it as its own individual image. That obviously didn't get rated, but you can go and reframe an image by zooming out further and repositioning before you save it. So
the fact that it will automatically save 4 different poses of a Pokemon, regardless of if you save any to the album. Like, I barely save any images to the album. I just keep the best ones that are, point scorers or whatever. I don't really care about saving other ones otherwise.
Yeah.
I like that you can then look back at your album and be like, oh yeah, that's that same Pokemon, like slaking in 4 different poses. That's really cool. And I like that.
Yeah, and theoretically, I think it is cool when you get really good photos of all those moments. There's also times of like, I don't know, this looks like a Pokemon that's really far away and you can barely see it, but it's a 3-star, so that's the one I chose on my pass through the level, right? And that's, I think, I like this idea in concept. In execution, it feels like padding because they only let you choose 1 image per Pokemon per run. which makes it so that if you have a great run where you got a 1-star, a 2-star, and a 3-star of a Pokemon within that same level, tough luck, buddy. You're going to have to choose one of them. And maybe one of them was really hard to get and tricky and you didn't quite know how you got it. Oftentimes it would happen where, like, I got a 3-star for this Pokemon. I have no idea why. I don't really know what the animation trigger was or what the reason for this being a 3-star was, but I know that a 3-star will be harder for me to get than a regular 1-star, so I'm just going to choose that one.
I hear you, but I think you're over gamifying it. Like, the whole point of the game is to
it's a video game.
Yeah,
of course
it's a video game, but I'm sure they are going for high scores, but
yeah,
they just want you to replay these levels as much as possible. And,
yes, exactly.
And enjoy the chill vibes of being in the Pokemon world. And
yeah, my point from that is, like, you don't need to make the player play through them as much as possible, because I think there is enough stuff here, right? Like, I would,
if you want to beat the game, you don't have to. Your gripe with it is that you wanted a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star on one run, and the game's saying, yeah, we're giving you that. You can replay the level if you want 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. If you're just here to beat the game, you don't need them.
Yeah, I kind of want, the thing is, I think I would have been more willing to fill out the entire Pokédex had I been able to do that, right? Like, and I would have given the game more time and would have been more invested in doing it had I been able to be like, oh, I only need to get this one more image for this Pokemon, so I'll go and do that, right?
I agree, but you're gonna have to be replaying the levels in any case to level up the levels.
Of course you are, but I think there's a degree to which that Meganium level, that you have to play that 4 times, right, to get 4 different images. And you do get a speed up later on, and you do get the ability to, once you've taken an image, you can quit out the level and go to the professor straight away. So that is good. That's definitely there for you. But especially in those, like, Illumina Pokemon levels, you have one image for one Pokemon every run through. And so first you got to figure out all 4 things, making sure that you get the final one especially was a fucking nightmare to get in the first place, right? To get even 1 or 2 images of that final one. And yeah,
I found the second last one harder than the final one.
Oh, well, yeah, I think we're talking about the same one, actually.
Okay.
I'm not talking about the last one.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is like, I like this game a good deal. I think it's really cool. I just think it doesn't. It trips over itself in certain places. For me personally, where I totally see where it will not be an issue for other people. And I said on Twitter, Pokemon Snap, kind of a roguelike, right? Like, in some ways, there is more. It's more roguelite-y because there's permanent progression in terms of photos you take and areas you unlock and XP you gain. But fundamentally, it's a game about playing through the same spaces again and again, and they change, and you'll have different experiences. But it's kind of about doing the same thing again and again.
Yeah, it's weird because it's one of those games that has it's almost 2 games in one, where on one hand it's let's get snaps of every single Pokemon, and on the other hand they've got this for a Pokemon story, like, it's a fine story, it's a decent story, it's fine, like, it's cool that they've actually done like a little thing that links like ruins to the overall meaning of Illumina, these islands and all that. Like, I for the game world of Pokemon, I thought that worked fine for this game and feels like a nice step up from the first game. So it's like this little story-driven thing on one hand, and then on the other hand, it's just a very roguish, let's replay these levels loads, finding every single secret and, catching them all. Gotta catch them all, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of both those in one, a bit like a Pokemon game is, where you've got the story, but you've also got the wider aim of catching every single Pokemon. I think it does a good job of appealing to both those audiences.
Yeah, and then there's real satisfaction in, like, nailing an image that is, like, perfectly centered and really, like, the Pokemon is in frame. And
how cute are some of these Pokemon? Like, the animations and the...
I love just the first level with Pichu and Grookey just running around the whole time.
Oh my God, yeah.
Chasing after each other and just being scamps. That stuff is great. Like, the Bidoofs that go down the river holding the logs in their mouth. There's a lot of character, I think, that you don't normally get in a Pokemon game from this iteration of it, where you, like, the idea of Pokemon, the notion that they live in the wild and you can go out and see them in their habitat and capture them. That's always the kind of meta kind of dream of the RPG series that's never really delivered on, because you run through a piece of grass that then flashes to a battle screen, and so there's not that kind of physical, grounded in the world thing that maybe this new Arceus game will be potentially.
Yeah.
That's exciting to think about.
But this is definitely the closest thing until then. Totally.
Yeah, and that's the really nice thing about it is you see them interacting in the wild like animals, right? Like, and that is kind of the base idea of what Pokemon were to begin with. Is like they're these animals who also have like superpowers that you can send out and fight each other with. Which I don't know, the whole concept of Pokemon, I think at this point in time is, I don't know, it's like cage fighting with animals and stuff like that. It's a little weird, but it's fancy land, it's fancy people, whatever. I do think it nails that aspect, which is, wow, look at these beautiful places, and here are these Pokemon. They're underwater, they're flying, they're kind of just living life out there, wherever you are. And I think that the game does a great job of portraying kind of in a quote unquote realistic way which they would behave.
It's a very believable world, even as fantasy
totally.
as it is. And I think, it just looks so, like, some of them are so cute, but that spectacular moment when there was one in the desert where I was like lobbing things into this sandstorm thing, like tornado, and eventually like a Flygon just comes out and just starts flying.
What the fuck?
It's like, it's like, wow, gee, like, and you like snapping, like those moments combined with how cute some of the little ones are, I think it just does a really good job of the spectacular big Pokemon, the reveals, which I don't think I'd got a ton of, but certainly looking online, there's loads out there that I want to kind of hopefully delve in a bit deeper later in the year. Because I like I said, I'm 17 hours in. I've done a lot of runs, and because I was just constantly picking up this game for like a run here, a run there, because every run is like 3 minutes, 4 minutes long, maybe.
Yeah, they're pretty short. Yeah,
it does a really good job. I found this game incredibly easy and nice to just pick up and play, get some photos, and then put my Switch in sleep mode again and come back later. So yeah, I was very pleased overall. Like, I think Caroline has seen me play this game and is now like, can I try this game? And I'm like, okay, fine, I'm done with it for now. So yeah, go for it. So I think she's going to give it a go.
Yeah, I found it hard to pick up personally. I don't know why. I think
really.
Yeah, and I don't know why it was. It was. I kind of was playing it for the show more than my own enjoyment in some senses of like, I got to finish this by the time we talk about it. And like, that's not to say I didn't like it or didn't enjoy it, because I had a good time with it. But I think once I got to like the 4 or 5 hour mark, I was like, okay, this is the game. I know this is the game, and I just need to finish it now and get through the other areas and get to the end of it. And yeah, that's not like I don't want to like say that that's a critique of the game itself. It's more a critique of myself and how I feel about, like, it, for me it's not my type of game necessarily. And that's totally fine, because I think it's really well done and really well made, but it just doesn't, I don't think it connects with me in the same way that it does with someone like you who grew up with it and really enjoyed it.
It's doing a very specific thing, like it's doing a very unique thing, arguably, in like the wider video game sphere, as it were. Like it's a very dated style of game, and
100%.
If there's one series that's going to do something that's a bit dated but it's still going to sell gangbusters, it's definitely Pokemon.
Yeah, and look, man, people with Nintendo, so often we hear like Nintendo being like, well, we need new ideas to make this next game. Like, we can't do an F-Zero until we have a really good, bold new idea. And the fans are screaming like, just fucking make GX and put it online, right? Like, just that's all people want, is like, just do the thing you did before, because we haven't had one. And Nintendo, to their credit with this, that's what they did. They're like, okay, we just...
New Pokemon, new locations, same formula. And it's what I think people who like Pokemon Snap are really loving this game. I think there's plenty of people who are coming to Pokemon Snap news saying like, this isn't for me. And that's kind of what I expected with this game. Like, I think it's like low 80s Metacritic or something. Like, that's kind of what I expected. And I think that's a really good result for what they're going for. Although I'd still have to say this game is probably a 1 out of 10, because I've not found Dragonite yet.
Oh, well, there we go.
Like,
you can't.
It's just not good enough. I could be wrong. You might be there. I don't know.
I think I've heard it's in the range of 200 and something Pokemon in this game overall.
I believe it's 220, I want to say, and I think I'm on 180. So I'm like,
oh wow, even you still have quite a few left to find in that case. It definitely seems like these areas are dense with stuff, even if it isn't obvious on the surface. Like on the first playthrough, you might be like, well, I think I saw everything there, and you totally didn't, right? Because there are things up above you, and that's kind of
when that level 3 unlocks, it's like especially in that jungle area, you can just noticeably going in at level 1, you're like, where is everything? And level 3, it's like jumping out the trees, coming in your right at you in your face.
Did you find any need to go back to the previous levels of a game? Like once, to go back to level 1, was there any reason to do so?
When you say reason to do so, do you mean to progress the game or for my own interest? Or?
No, to get, for example, is there Pokemon in like the first level of an area that don't appear in the second level or the third area? Like, is there a certain pose that you can only find in this one level of this one area? Is what I mean.
There might be. I've not found a good example yet, and I'd be confident that the game's probably set it up so that you can get a 1, 2, 3, 4 star all within the one level of the final level, like level 3.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty confident they'll set it up that way, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I would hope, because it feels, I don't know, maybe a bit weird to go back to that level 1 off, because level 1 does feel for most of these levels to be just like introductory and like getting you used to the space and where you're going to go through. And of course these areas do have branching pathways, which I think the scan is another interesting thing we haven't really talked about. I wish was a little less finicky, because sometimes I'm like holding the X button but you're still moving, and so like it moves out and it's like, okay, move it slightly back to the central area to scan something, and I didn't really understand the scanning sometimes. Like, should I take a picture of something I've scanned, or is it just for flavor text? And then sometimes the scan is to change your route, and so you move through a different area. Again, like just some of the nuts and bolts of the actual playing of the game. Obvious stuff is just like explained to you, and then not obvious stuff is not, which is a little frustrating in some senses. But it definitely it's one of those games. Even though I finished it now, there is, like, more so than other stuff, a sense that I probably should go back to it and check out some of these other things I haven't seen yet, because really the delight of this for me was the first time seeing something, right? Of like, oh, it's that Pokemon. Oh yes, it's fucking Yanmega in the jungle, right? Shout out to Boost Bug, right? That's my shit. So seeing Pokemon for the first time, it's kind of the magic of what I liked about Sword and Shield, was I didn't follow any of the leaks or any of the stuff leading up to that game, and I was like, I don't know any of the Pokemon, I'm going in blind. Best thing about that game was going in blind, because you just see stuff you've never seen before, and it's like, that's the delight of Pokemon. As someone who doesn't find any joy in the actual RPG mechanics anymore, because I've seen through the Matrix, and like having done competitive Pokemon, it just doesn't, there's nothing interesting about it.
To the game's credit, like, I think marketing wise, they've definitely shown a lot of that first level and arguably maybe the second or third level. But beyond that, I think the marketing's been really clean of like, there's a lot of levels and Pokemon in this game that has been nowhere near the marketing. And that's really nice to see, because that's arguably that thing, like when these games come out, they want to showcase their game almost as much as possible to get you to buy it. And you could argue that that's quite easy to do with Pokemon. They could show some end game Pokemon and spoil it, but really I think the game's done a really good job of just saying, hey, this is the first level, here's some cute Pokemon, here's some spectacular Pokemon. If you're not buying it from this marketing, that's fine, but this is what we want to show so far. But we've got a lot more that we're hiding, basically. That I still think the trailers do a good job of kind of suggesting things here and there without revealing the big ones.
Yeah, definitely. I prefer that restrained approach in many ways, because it leaves a lot for people to discover, and that's great. And there's still lots to discover. I've been seeing Cerebi Joe on Twitter being like, "Hey man, like, we still don't know everything about this. I'm trying to like update." Like, man, I feel bad for that guy every time a new Pokemon game comes out, because everyone is shouting at him, and he's like, "Look, I'm one man. I'm trying to figure out everything going on in this."
I've read a couple of guides just to get some hints on some other big Pokemon in the earlier levels, and the guides are written in like, we tried it on this run and we threw the Illumina ball and it did this thing,
and we think maybe it did this, but we're not sure. That's kind of the thing though, right? Like with the star rating, it's
quite difficult to break down.
It's hard to like, because the star ratings don't equate to do this thing for every Pokemon. Some star rating for a number 2 will be the Pokemon eating an apple. A star rating for a different Pokemon will be it being hit with it, but then another one will be it eating. And it's a little, I don't know, it's just not, that's kind of the clarity I would kind of like. Maybe even what would be nice is not telling you up front, but maybe after you've taken the photo, maybe a little description of what the star rating is of like, okay, you got this one because this was the thing that the Pokemon was doing, right? Or like this was the type of animation, so that next time if you want to improve on that photo, like this is the tricky part for me of like, I don't even know how I got that 3-star photo. So how do I know, first of all, how to trigger it, and then focus on getting a 3-star photo that actually looks good, that I think is going to be really great for my collection. And I think the long-term players of this game are going to be the people who want to get everything, yes, but then make their album look really nice. Like have photos that they are really proud of and they want to have as the one that they show, if you know what I mean.
And I've already been back and looked at like my best scores, best Pokemon. And I'm really chuffed, you know. Like I think there's some really nice pictures in there. And sure, I have sunk quite a lot of time into this game, but like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to get, you know, 4 stars of all the different Pokemon. But like, I'm very happy with what I've got, and I think the game does a good job of, you know, offering different levels of, you know, scope for what different people want, although of course there will just be so many Pokemon fans who want 4 stars on every single Pokemon, and that's hard to do, very hard to do.
It's tricky. It's a game with kind of low skill floor, I should say, and a high ceiling in some senses, right? You definitely can get a lot better, and you unlock like a kind of multi-shutter thing at the end where you can like take multiple ones in one.
I've got it now, and you can arrange it to do 3 shots or like 6 shots or even like 9 shots. Yeah,
and I think generally the number they give you is like 70 or 60 or something number of photos you can take per run, and that tended to be pretty good. Like by the end I was like, oh shit, I am actually reaching the end of my reel here, because I'm just snapping everything possible and like doing as many as you can, and you kind of get into practice by the end of just like just to like get that perfect centered one that you will then eventually present to the professor. And the scoring system is weird. Again, it's kind of arbitrary. It's one of those things that I was talking about this when I was streaming the game, and like art is so subjective, and photography is an art in many ways, and so something that is stylistic, that maybe has a Pokemon far off in the distance but is like beautiful and perfect, it's going to score less than a Braviary like right in your fucking face, right? And
but I think the game thematically it's about research and science more than art and photography, and in that sense it relates better to the scoring system, which is basically we want it as large as possible facing the camera. We want the whole Pokemon, and if it's doing something interesting, then obviously you'll get more points. So
that's a really good point. I didn't think about that, but I like that. I mean, that makes sense logically. But I guess as a person who is artistic and creative in senses of like,
they should have like art mode or something.
But even then, right? Like an algorithm, a computer can never determine, at least at our current point in time. Like, and that's the other thing is like, even if you had another human, you know, making a judgment on a piece of art, like everyone sees things differently, right? So like, you can't. There's no scoring art, right? You can't put numbers on it for the most part. So it's a little in my head. It was a little bit of a weird juxtaposition, but that's fine. They've gamified it in a way that works, and I think it's good, and it is satisfying when you get that big kind of clear, because the character models are so nice and full and like rounded in senses, like the Quagsire and all those type of Pokemon. That
really like, these are living monsters that just look great and are animated well, and it's very good to see.
Beautiful animations, some great stuff going on in here. So do you think, Bally, before the end of the year you'll keep coming back to this game? Sounds like you're still pretty into it.
I'd quite like to get all the legendaries. Some of them are pretty tricky, but we'll see.
Great. I did. The other thing I will say is my favorite thing probably about this game is the fucking photo mode editing situation where you can put these dumb stickers on things, and I had one of mine pop off a little bit. I think I got like 400 likes or something on a hoot that is in the rain with a top hat, a bow tie, and is holding an umbrella and an ice cream, and that was fun. So you can definitely, like, as someone who has done a lot of Photoshop editing in the last year or so, obviously it's not at that level, but I was kind of surprised of like, oh, you can actually like order these in terms of like what layer comes in front of another layer, and there's a good amount of like size options and adjustment options. It was a pretty fun thing to mess around with at the beginning of the game. I never really went back and did more of it than I did right at the start, but yeah, it was neat. It was fun putting a fucking baseball cap and sunglasses on a Quagsire and making him look at a giant cake. That was great, you know. So fun things that you can share. I haven't actually, weirdly, I thought I would see a lot more sharing of pictures on social media. Haven't seen that many, and I wonder why that is. Maybe it is one of those things where, because you are on Rails, the good photos, I think a lot of people might have the same good photos, because of the way that works.
Yes, that's definitely an issue for sure.
Yeah, but hey, good game. Enjoyed it. Cool stuff. Pokemon Snap. Go check it out. I'm sure everyone who listens to this is probably playing it or has played it at this point, but there are our thoughts on the game. I played one more thing. It's called Say No More, with an exclamation mark after no, which is a small game that is, I don't know how to describe it. It's basically... it's almost like an on-rails narrative game where you don't really do much except for press one button, which is to say no to people.
Just like Pokemon Snap. Just
like Pokemon Snap.
It's
kind of, I would call it like a comedy adventure game. I think it is published by Thunderful, who are the combination of Zoink Games and Image and Form. Image and Form and Zoink, I believe, formed a super publisher called Thunderful, and they are now publishing a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure who made this, but anyway. It's a whole thing. I think they're both based somewhere in Europe, one of those places. I can't remember. Anyway. Sweden, Finland, wherever, these places. We always talk about in the past of the indie developers who are like the kind of Norway, Finland, crew, who people making Tesla Grad and Trine and all that stuff. But yes, Thunderful, big publisher now, doing some good work, and I got a review code for this on Switch, and it is, you play it as an intern who joins a big company, big corporation, and you... at the beginning can't really say no to anything. The idea behind this culture of this corporation is everyone overworks and all they do is work, and you can't say no to anything. That's a bad thing. You must say yes. When your superior tells you get you tea, you go get it. When you are told to do all the printing, you have to go and do it. And so it is like a light critique of corporations and capitalism in the sense of hey, we probably shouldn't be doing all this overworking and being our jobs as our lives and those types of things. And this weird magical tape recorder falls down at your desk, and you put it on your headphones, and it's this guy who's this motivational guy who's hey, I'm going to teach you to say no. And so the game is about you saying no to people as you walk through these offices, and these weird crazy situations happen. You chase after this CEO, and you're getting past all these workers who get in your way, and you just say no to them. And the really funny thing is, at the beginning of the game, it gives you a language choice to say no in, and this doesn't dictate the language of the dialogue or anything like that, because it's all in English. A lot of it is I don't know where to place the accent, but they are all clearly European accent speaking English, but they're very funny and quite charming stuff. But to say the word no, you can choose what language you say it in, and so I chose Hindi, and so I was saying nahi every time when I was being assaulted by these people, which I thought was really fun, and it has the Hindi word for it written, as opposed to just saying no on a lot of these loading screens and things like that. And I was like, this is unique and different, and I really appreciated that, because I hear that all the time, just casually being around an Indian family. I say it myself a bunch. So that was unique, but you are, this intern who basically just goes on this little adventure of, teaching your co-workers that, hey, we should say no more and that type of thing. And they add slight mechanics to it where it's here's a lazy no. So you're no. Or here's a no which is no, sharp and cold. And here's a no that's no. It's removed, kind of. The way in which you say it, you can charge it up, so you hold down the button and it charges up to like a big boom saying no. But from what I found, a lot of that stuff is just for flavor, because there's not a lot of failure involved. There's no failure state really. There's no way in which you can really lose if you are in a situation where you're having a kind of mini boss fight, as it was, saying no against somebody. You just keep doing it until you finish it, and so there's no puzzle involved of oh, this person is this thing and that thing, therefore I need to do a lazy no, which is also this. There's none of that, so there's no reason for you to really switch things up aside from flavor, which I thought was a little weird, because I thought they could gamify it a little bit more, but I guess the reason they didn't was because they wanted to make it quite a simple thing that they're kind of telling their story, getting along with it, and And yeah, for the most part, it's pretty neat. It has, no biting, I should say, critique or anything like that. But it is very much lightly saying, hey, how about we all just kind of, leave early and don't work anymore and don't deal with any of this bullshit that modern life, so often kind of crushes people with, especially in corporate work environments and places like that. So anyway, it's very cartoony, very colourful.
It's short.
And really short, couple of hours. Didn't take me long to get through, but if you want something that is very, very light mechanically and has some goofy writing with a little bit of critique in there, that's say no more. So we should all say no more to things, so that the world can be a better place, right? And so we're going to say no to you right now because you have to listen to this musical break before you can listen to the next segment of the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this with your emails. See you in a bit.
Hello folks, welcome back to part 2 of today's show. It is time again for emails, and it's also the time the well has gone dry. MBZ, we're putting out the call.
It's really happened this time though.
It's really
actually
happened. This happens every now and then. The well
Yeah.
gets dry and we're just like, we need some more emails. There's a
Yes.
lot been going on. We had our backlog club, that all went well, that was good fun. But now we need to return to emails and we need some more. So if you have an email, a comment, a question, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We really need them this time, guys. So we'd hugely appreciate
The show will die without them, clearly. It's like, when you wish on a fairy or you don't believe in fairies and they die. That's what happens with this show with emails. I think that's an analogy.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
If you're out on a run or something and you're listening and you're like, I'll write an email when I get back. It's just like, make sure you write it when you get back. Like I think James Jones said, if that email's just sitting in your drafts and you're about to send and you thought it was a bit a bit below the belt or something, just send it anyway. So if it's sitting in your drafts, send us that email anyway. Yeah. We want to hear it. You can also post a comment, a question in our Discord server. Link to that in the show notes. Also on our Twitter account. You can join the community. There's a thread in there called emails. Post in there, which usually appreciate it. So our first email this week is from Sable, who says, hey guys, Sable again. Today my questions are, how do you feel about 3D Land? It's been getting some well-deserved attention lately and is also my first Mario platformer ever. I first got it when I was like 7 back in 2011 or 2012. Now I'm 15 and in high school and I still love and play this game. That's got to be a testament to how fun it is, right? Not that it's objectively the best ever platformer of Mario, but it's just got something special to it, a certain kind of magic, I guess. Especially since Nintendo designed it as a 3D Mario game that plays like a 2D Mario game. My next question is, how would you feel about a redesign to the Switch game cartridge box? Making it bigger, putting manuals back in, small posters, stickers, etc. Personally, I would love to see this.
All right. Well, first of all, giving me a heart attack here, saying that you were 7 when 3D Land came out, and you're, because I was at university when 3D Land came out, and now I want to shrivel up into a ball and die. But yeah, 3D Land, I am a big advocate of 3D Land. It is my favorite 3D Mario, all said and done. And I think a lot of it comes down to it was primarily designed as a handheld game. And Nintendo did this a lot in the 3DS era where, and I mean previous to this as well on DS, like I think part of the reason Sony struggled somewhat with PlayStation Portable and with Vita to different extents was they were making games that were more console-like experiences and therefore harder to kind of pick up and play on a handheld. And of course, Nintendo's kind of doing that themselves now with the Switch, but the fact that you can go between the two is certainly helps a lot of people who want to play their big things on the TV and the small things on the handheld. But 3D Land was really a portable Mario game in every sense. Like the levels were short and bite-sized. You can get in, get out. It was designed in a way that took advantage for the 3D in a way that nothing else on the system really did. There's definitely games that we both love and look fantastic with that turned on, but for the most part, yeah, it was the game that stood out when it came to that. And yeah, I would love to go back and play it sometime soon because it has been I think a decade now, right? It came out in 2011, so in 2021. It's going to be a decade around September, I think, is when it came out, or November time. I remember that day so fondly because 3D Land and Skyward Sword came out on the same day, and I went downstairs at uni to the place where our mail got sent to, and I picked up my package, and it was both of them in one package from Amazon, and I was so happy. I was thrilled, and I played Skyward Sword loads and played 3D Land loads, so that's very fond memories I have of those games at that time. Bally, how do you feel about 3D Land, its legacy, and how it's been viewed?
It really is the most unique out of all the 3D Marios. Like 3D World, as much as it plays with that initial style, and it is still quite a linear game, it's not quite as tight and linear. It is still more kind of, the levels feel a bit wider, and it's obviously designed a bit more for the 4-player kind of thing. So it does feel like quite a distinctive game, as much as I love 3D World more than 3D Land. However, I'd love Nintendo to return to doing something 3D Land related. You know, for a while, Nintendo practically turned the 2D Mario, New Super Mario Bros. Into like this annualized series, and there were like 4 of them in the space of about 5 or 6 years. Yeah, I'd love it if they just decided, right, we're going to make a new 3D Land series. It's going to be these tight controlling levels, and we're just going to use the Mario Odyssey engine, and it's going to be one come out every couple of years on the Switch until the end of the Switch's life cycle. I'd absolutely love that. Just a pack full of levels and still include, the flags, and just make these solid, tight, linear levels that are based in that 3D Land mold. That doesn't have to go into the big Mario Odyssey open world, and I'm sure we'll still get a Mario Odyssey 2. But just to do something that tight and that is so focused, as much as I think there are kind of 3D Land style levels within Odyssey, there's very few of them, and perhaps some of them are more later in the game, but just like a whole game based around that linear design, I think would be awesome in the Odyssey engine. Like just give us that movement, give us the cap, I'd love that in 3D Land.
I do wonder, to what extent do Nintendo feel like they are not beholden, but because the Switch is a more powerful platform and they aren't restricted in the same way as they were with 3DS, whether these types of games are valuable for them to go back and make again, right? And we have seen them go back to 2D Zelda in some sense with the Link's Awakening remake, but that's a remake, and so I don't count it in the same vein as something like a brand new game.
Right. We've not seen Nintendo go for a handheld style new game since the launch of the Switch, arguably, or can you think of any good examples?
Yeah, I don't think there is one really, and if it is, then it's a port like Sushi Striker, right, which was originally made for 3DS, but then they put it on Switch as well. And you think about where is 2D Metroid, right? Are they working on another one of those? Are they working on an original 2D Zelda? And with 3D World now being ported to the Switch, does that devalue a 3D
Yeah.
Land style game
Even-
in the eyes of people, you know?
Even New Super Mario Bros. As a port, like they've not done an original
Yes.
2D Mario. Sure, there's Mario Maker, but that's
Right.
hard to argue that that's like a handheld designed kind of game because of all the
Yeah.
Maker aspects. So
Yeah, totally.
it's very interesting. We are now 4 years into the life cycle of the Switch and not had a new handheld style focused game, arguably. Do write in if you have any ideas that we've missed any.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the stuff, but you're right. Like it has been ports from other platforms.
Ports
that
and
have,
remakes,
have kind of done that. And I guess like when you think about it, you know, the new Super Mario Brothers series was on console as well as on handheld, so that is one that, you know, I could very much foresee them doing another 2D, but that's also just because 2D Mario sells so ridiculously well.
Yes.
Even the port from Wii U is over 10 million units now, as we will discuss later in the show. So it's absurd. It's definitely a well that they can mine, and you know, they're definitely always looking to port new things to the system, especially now that they're putting Miitopia on for some godforsaken reason. Like, man, I'll talk about this at some point on the show when I finish it, but I've been playing Ever Oasis, and I'm like, fuck, dude, this game, this would be so much better as a Switch game to be ported than Miitopia, right? Like, I look at Miitopia and I'm like, this is stupid. Why are they doing this? Ever Oasis is actually a good video game, and I think, man, it would be great if they put that on the system, but it doesn't look like they are at the moment, so we'll see. But yeah, I love 3D Land. I'll continue to advocate for it, and I think it'd be a good one to revisit at some point, because it has been, you know, when it comes around to November, it'll be a decade, and it's a long time, and that makes me feel extremely very old.
So here's one that'll make you feel even older, MBZ. What's your views on putting manuals back into the boxes and changing Switch cartridge boxes?
Switch cartridge boxes. It's kind of wild, isn't it? Because Switch cartridge boxes are an absurd waste of plastic. When you think about the size of the cartridge and the fact that there is nothing else in that box except for the cartridge.
I remember when I was younger telling my grandmother, like, this is a Game Boy Advance cartridge. And she's like, and how much did you spend on that? And I said, like, £35. She's like, £35 for that little chunk of plastic? She just assumed, like,
it was just a bit of plastic, that you were not going to do anything with.
Right.
She'd be, horrified at this point with Switch cartridges, right? Because you can practically pop those in your mouth and swallow them.
I also want to say to Sable, like, I'm pretty sure in 2011 when, you know, like Mario 3D Land came out, that we were already beyond, you know,
manuals and stuff,
and boxes, but I guess I must be wrong on that.
I feel like 3DS games still had manuals, but maybe they were like lighter and not as in depth as they kind of were back in the day. Because I certainly remember, you know, coming home from game or whatever with a new GameCube game and opening it before you get home, and you're in the car and you're looking through the manual, and the manual has screenshots of what you're about to play, and it shows you like what all the buttons do, and you had to like learn the buttons. And it was, you know, my dad still does this, right, with whenever you're like getting some new piece of technology, but he's always like, read the manual, because that's what you did back in the day for like TVs and all these types of things, of like, you got to read the manual to find out what to do. And these days you just don't need to do that anymore.
But if you do read the manuals these days, I swear the quality of explanation in manuals has plummeted off a cliff. They are just like this legalese, almost just covering their asses kind of thing now, whereas before, I think, like what your dad's ethos is, it was genuinely very useful to read the manual and find out how to put the thing together. Now it's like, it's just, well, first of all, it's in like 8 different languages, and it's just, it's really badly written normally.
Yeah, totally. And and there was definitely a pizzazz to a video game manual. It was almost like a mini magazine to some degree, right? Of especially Nintendo ones, they were like full of color. And I remember the Metro Prime 2 one especially was like, oh, there's loads of screenshots here of like later parts of the game, and showed you all the power-ups you were going to get. It almost was a spoiler thing, to be honest with you, because back then no one fucking gave a shit about spoilers. And so like seeing what all the power-ups would be in this game you were going to play through was kind of like a more of an excitement builder than kind of people being worried about being spoiled by anything. So it was like, oh yeah, here's the last beam in the game you get, and here are some of the bosses that you will fight. And it's kind of like, wow, we have certainly turned a corner on that as a society generally when it comes to those types of things. And even this point in time, video game marketing is like, yeah, we're only showing you this one part of this game, and you're not allowed to talk about this. This is embargoed. Does PS5 games come with any sort of stuff in the box, Bally, at this point in time? Because I don't think PS4 games did. Really.
No. It's just a disc and maybe like a single piece of promotional paper or something. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. It's weird because I think Switch boxes, do they still have the clips on the left-hand side of the box to hold stuff? Because I feel like those are there, and yet they're never used. There's never actually any piece of paper inside a Switch box at this point in time.
I feel like, okay, MBZ, I have gone and gotten my PS5 box for Spider-Man Miles Morales and my Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch case.
Two perfect examples.
I must say that the Switch box has no clips on the left-hand side when you open. Nope.
Damn. All right.
It does have clips on the right-hand side, and I have a single sheet in French because I got my Switch in Belgium.
Yes, yeah.
With some French that I can't read. It's like health and safety, I believe.
Does that seem like it would have come from the shop you bought it at, though, rather than it being...
No, it's got a Nintendo logo on the back and like a code and stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
And then, my PS5 box does have two clips on the left.
Yes.
And then it was just... The only thing in there was, again, like the legal single sheet, a bit like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
And then I had a code for like Spider-Man Remastered, which came with the disc, obviously. So
that makes sense. Yeah, so not really any proper manuals going on there. And I think like when Sable is mentioning things like small posters, stickers and stuff, that at this point in time has really been relegated to like special edition versions of games, right? Like when I
like Amazon will wrap it into stuff sometimes. Like I got Luigi's Mansion stickers with 3, and like you got some Pokemon Snap stuff, right?
I did, yeah. Pokemon Snap, they gave me a poster, and I also got a bunch of stickers that you can put on things. So it depends on the retailer, I guess, at this point, where they have like their own special things that they add for pre-order bonuses, but you also get special edition things like I got with Fire Emblem, which was the art book and the poster and music soundtrack and those types of things all get rolled in, but regular stuff not so much these days. Although I don't know, I feel like especially if you do pre-order things from certain places, there is a tendency to give you a lot of tat with it, and frankly I do view it as tat. I don't really need any of this shit, but it comes and I'm like, okay, fine, maybe I'll figure out a way to use this sticker on something, but I tend to not like putting stickers on things. I did that with my original DS and it just looks like a garbage mess Sticky now marks. Right? Yeah, stick marks everywhere. It's just it's a bit of a nightmare generally, so I've never been one to go down that avenue. But when I bought Cyberpunk, which I still haven't played because it was a fucking disaster and my computer couldn't run it, I got a literal physical version which had no CD, obviously, because discs you don't do anymore, but it had a bunch of like temporary tattoos and like stickers and that type of nonsense that it comes with whatever physical version you buy on PC these days, because why else do you buy physical on PC? I mean, I bought it because it was the cheapest thing I could find. It was cheaper for them to ship me this whole fucking cardboard box with all this shit in it than to just send me a code via email. So go figure, right? Like, bizarre.
When you said Cyberpunk temporary tattoos, it made me think, I'm sure there must have been a good number of fans in the build up to that game who will have got legitimate tattoos.
Who got legit tattoos, yeah. 100%, without knowing what would happen to that game.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, yes. Thanks, Sable, for your question. And I think like redesigning the Switch box is not something that I really care too much about. If I was to say anything, I would say just make it smaller, right? And waste less plastic, essentially. But we are, of course, entering a more digital era as well. So I'm sure boxes will soon be a thing of the past at some point in time. But yeah.
Our next email is from Ryan, who says, "Hey, MBZ and Bally, video game movies have always been a point of contention among people. The 1993 Mario movie wasn't considered good, and Nintendo long after was reluctant to let other franchises break into the movie TV world. On the other hand, Pokemon has been on the TV and movie space successfully for a long time. The Doom movie was fun, but I wouldn't say it was a cinematic masterpiece by any means. With a new Mario movie supposedly coming out next year and talks of a Zelda show that was scrapped, what video game franchise do you think deserves a spotlight on the big or small screen? I'd like to hear some realistic and crazy ideas. Maybe a Metroid miniseries with a Mandalorian vibe that has little bounty missions leading up to a big finale. Or what about a silent movie starring Cuba navigating an ever-changing landscape, slowly descending into madness as he thinks he escapes, only to be presented with a harder puzzle? Looking forward to what you think. Cheers, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's always a tricky arena, video game movies and TV shows, but I think like in the last few years there's definitely been an uptake in some in them being produced, but also actually having some good ones. I mean, I liked the Detective Pikachu movie. I thought it was pretty good. I had fun, and I didn't think there was anything wrong with it necessarily. It's not going to win fucking Oscars, but it's a good fun movie. The Witcher TV show I loved. Obviously that's really slightly different because it is based more on the games were based on books in the first place, and so this is still based on the books, even though it takes, I think, a lot aesthetically from the games. Like Henry Cavill's look for Geralt is similar enough to what they have in the games.
Oh, very
it
similar.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And like the kind of armor and the world and that kind of vibe. But I don't know if I would 100% count that one, just because its origins are in literature and not in video games.
Castlevania animated series.
Yeah, so you love that. I've watched the first 2 seasons of that. I definitely need to catch up on it, but I enjoyed that as well. And I think it's, for me, when it comes down to it, especially for Nintendo franchises, I think animated is the way to go a lot of the time, and I think Castlevania has proved that. Of like, they've done a really good job with an animated version of this, and I think partly is because like budget wise it would be quite hard to do a really high budget Castlevania show, right? Whereas with animation you can kind of get away with it because you can draw whatever, right? And you have this huge like amazing landscapes and giant castles and explosions and things going on, but it's all animated, right? So it's within the realm of whatever budget you have, versus doing it full blown.
I do think also we are now, like, I think Last of Us HBO series is going to be very interesting, where MBZ, your opinion on Last of Us is like, hey, this could have just been a TV show, it doesn't have to be a game. So like now we're going to put that to the test.
Totally. Pedro Pascal, man, as Joel.
Like crazy great cast they've got so far. Obviously the material is strong, so I'm really interested to see how that goes, and whether my understanding is they're sticking to the main story, but they're going to do extra stuff, was my impression. It's not one for one as such, but it's one for one with extra side quests, as it were. And then this has been rumored since, I swear, the game came out, but is now supposedly confirmed and is going into production fairly soon, as a Halo series. And
that's been a while cooking, I think.
Which is, that thing's been rumored for such a long time, so I'm interested to see how that does. I have a lot more faith in the Last of Us show than the Halo show, but
totally.
But we'll see.
But on the other side, right, there's been the live action movies of like Fassbender and Assassin's Creed, and I don't think that went very well. I haven't seen it, but I've heard bad things. And
is it Jake Gyllenhaal in Prince of Persia?
I mean, that was a longer time ago, the Prince of Persia one. I'm thinking like a bit more recent, like Alicia Vikander with the reboot for Tomb Raider. Like the games were rebooted, they kind of rebooted the movies, and that was like fine. I kind of got bored, about halfway through that film, and I think they're doing another one of those. It was successful enough, but yeah, like these movies that try to do something with it that is a little bit further away from the games, and I don't know, trying to stick to it. It's weird and it's hard sometimes, because what makes a lot of these games special is not necessarily the story. Like those Tomb Raider reboots are fantastic action adventure games. I can't tell you the name of a character who isn't Lara Croft in them, right? Yeah. They're not built on that type of narrative.
It feels like sometimes companies just think they prescribe what we as the fans think are valuable about those experiences. Sure, Last of Us, the value is a lot in the story and the characters, and that could potentially translate really well. But as you say, games where it's a lot more based on the gameplay, the puzzles, like a Tomb Raider, it does feel weird when some big corporations like, yeah, we will make a Tomb Raider film and it will be successful because people love Tomb Raider. It's like, well, you've misunderstood why people like Tomb Raider in that sense.
Right. Or like with the Animus with Assassin's Creed, like they had to make this absurd machine that like lifts him in the air and he's like moving as he does things in the past. And it's like in Assassin's Creed, they just like lie on a bed or some shit and then their mind is taken. But like for a movie, they like have to make it more cinematic and like tie it. And so it kind of creates these issues.
I'm really nervous about the Mario film. I think like he is such an iconic character, and I know that isn't it like the Lego Movie team working on that or something?
It's Illumination who worked on Despicable Me and those films. Yeah.
So I mean, those are fine films, but like I'm really skeptical about the vibe of that film and how it's all going to work, and it is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like with Mario himself, it has to be silent comedy to some degree, right? Because he's never been a talking character, and obviously there are characters who talk around him. It was funny actually in Paper Mario when we played that. Luigi has a lot of dialogue in that game, right? Like Luigi actually talks. Mario never talks ever. And there are characters who do talk in the Mario universe, but he's always the front man who is, the silent protagonist. And I can't really think of a movie where one character is silent, because it's such a common thing in video games. Like it is we are so used to it in our space, but I can't think of a way that's ever been done in a film successfully.
Charles Martinet has sort of said, I've not been approached about the Mario film, so that maybe does imply he could be completely silent. That could go one of two ways. Either they've recast him as some voice actor who's going to give him a ton of lines, or he's going to be completely silent. Or they're going to reuse like lines from Mario Odyssey or something in the film.
Yeah, 100%.
Which I think would be unusual. But yeah, I'm nervous about that, but we'll see. What do you think for other perhaps Nintendo franchises that could work?
Yeah, so I kind of going along with the animated show vibe.
I've got an animated one as well.
I think that Animal Crossing would make an amazing kids show. And I think you could do it in a way where it's,
there's a whole Animal Crossing film in Japan.
Yeah, there is. I think there was an anime as well at some point. They've definitely done stuff. Japan tends to do a lot of this stuff. Like there was the Phoenix Wright live. Oh God, I watched that. It's great. Actually, one of my favorite video game adaptations is the Phoenix Wright live action adaptation. And now you've played the first game, Bally, I would recommend you watch that because it's based on the first game and all the cases in that first game. But yeah, that was never left Japan really, and you have to kind of watch it with subtitles and everything. But Animal Crossing as a kid show, I think, works really well because, first of all, like it's a cute, colorful environment that kids kind of get down with, but also you have ways to do those, like, you know how kids shows do those teachable moments of like, we're all friends and this is how you take care of people and this is how we take care of nature. We here are plants, we wash them every day and stuff like that. That type of vibe I feel like works.
Wash plants.
Yeah, we wash our plants. You dig them up from the soil, put them under the sink, give them a good rub, get some soap on them, wash them, put them back in. Was it water? There we go. Apologies. Yes, I'm trying. So this is what happened. When I was drunk once, is like, oh yeah, my phone. I accidentally dropped in the urinal. Let's wash my phone. That's a really good idea. R.I.P. that phone. That phone is died very soon after that. But yes, you know what I'm getting at. Is like, hey, we've got to teach kids the important things in life. And I think Animal Crossing has the bandwidth to do that because there are so many like little moments in it of you have to like help build places and you have to like get on with people and that type of thing, like very basic, like, hey, we're learning about being a human child. I think that could work really well. Like Isabelle is a perfect host / presenter style for that type of thing, you know what I mean? So I think that would work perfectly.
I'd want my kids to watch that, that
100%
educate them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not kind of the same vein of what we're talking here, which is more entertainment. But I think Animal Crossing doesn't fit that vibe. It much more fits this kind of edutainment, let's say, for kids in a way.
Right. I've gone for animated as well, and this is probably definitely more anime. Not that I know a ton about anime, but I want an Advance Wars anime.
Actually, you know what? The vibe fits it.
Based on the characters from the first 3 games, I just think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think Fire Emblem and Advance Wars both lend themselves to anime
Yes.
in a good way. I think, yeah, those. I don't know what the characters look like in the kind of darker like games on DS. Was it like
It was just
Days
the
of
one
Ruin?
game, Dark Conflict. I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
US or British name, but yeah, I never played that game, so it's one I need to get to again. But I
yeah,
would prefer it with the more cartoony, light-hearted
yeah.
characters from the first three games.
Yeah, I would imagine that as a more kind of bouncy, fun anime versus the kind of the Fire Emblem could lean much more into the dark, gritty style of anime.
Yeah, yeah.
They both work for that for sure.
But the whole kind of like military thing, I swear there's already been animes based in like that kind of like military cartoon. And
Well, you know that Japan loves school kids and high schools and stuff like that. I could see them adapting it to be like they all go to a military high school because like Andy looks like a 12-year-old. Let's be
military high
frank.
school. Yes.
Valkyria
Such a good
Chronicles
idea.
kind of has that vibe as well. I think the
Yeah.
second Valkyria Chronicles game is actually based in a high school, the PSP one, which I
Right.
haven't played yet. But that definitely is it's a thing that I could see working for this series for sure. Would
Cool.
work quite well. I also wrote down Pikmin nature documentary. Now I'm not sure how you do that, but I think like Miyamoto made those like short films with Pikmin, which were fun. I think they were pretty neat. They were more kind of like mini skit, like silent films.
I've not watched them yet. Have you?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube. I watched them
Yeah.
a while ago because you did have to buy them initially, and
I know they were like buy them on the 3DS for some outrageous price.
yes, yeah, it was really expensive. But they eventually, I think, put them all up for free on YouTube. So you know, jokes on you for buying on your Wii U or whatever it was available on at the time. But I think you could do a like David Attenborough style documentary, but with the Pikmin as like. Again, maybe more of a kids show type thing. If you're going to do a kids kind of nature show, you could have the Pikmin pop up in places and like, you know, the kids have to spot where they are on the screen and that type of thing, while also teaching them about the world and the environment and the natural kind of the state of things.
So are you superimposing Pikmin into the real world?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of how it would work.
I think that's cool. Yeah, because it would actually teach them. Right, I like that.
Yeah,
Very
for sure.
educational today, MBZ.
Yeah, I don't know why. I feel like I think the Animal Crossing thing of nature was like, oh, that triggered a thing in my brain of like, oh, Pikmin as well could both work for this. But outside of that, if we're just talking about pure entertainment, I mean, Blizzard have already done such an amazing job with those Overwatch shorts, but a full Overwatch animated film, oh, I would be so down for that. Like,
That
I
would
think
be really
that
cool.
that would nail exactly. It would maybe.
I would put good money on that happening in the next 5 years.
I totally would, yeah.
Yeah.
And like their animation studios are so talented. Like every time they do, even their World of Warcraft ones I've watched before, and it's like, man, they do such a good job of like short form storytelling within these little, like kind of bite-sized kind of mini movies, as it were, mini short films, and. I don't know if that translates necessarily to a full-blown thing. I know they're doing a lot more of that story stuff for the second game when Overwatch 2 comes out. But if they were to do like an origin story thing for like how Overwatch started, they got the crew together, all that type of stuff, I think, man, an animated film would be so good. And I definitely think it's realistic.
All that lore exists, and I believe there's like a comic book series because I've like
There is, yeah.
I went down a deep YouTube hole of like Overwatch lore and how the whole world formed and all these things and why the world is the way it is and like United Nations and all this stuff. And it's actually the kind of topic that would work really well in a full blown film. Like
Yes,
genuinely,
for sure.
I think it's a great shout.
And those shorts, I think, work for an older and younger audience generally as well. Like they
Yeah.
make them in such a way that they are kind of accessible to everybody,
Yeah.
which is great. Any others you have, Bally? I've got a couple more.
I would like a full blown puppet show for Star
Okay.
Fox, just like E3.
Oh yes, like Thunderbirds literally go back
Yes.
to the inspiration of it.
yes.
Yes.
Totally. And you know, if Star Fox can't come out with games, then why not turn them into a puppet show? You know, like I just think
I mean,
that'd be
they made
great.
those models right for that E3.
Yeah, they're sitting there ready to go.
Yeah. God, that would be so cool. I mean, I always thought about like, what if they actually took a full blown Thunderbird style puppet style for a game? Like that would look incredible if they were able to do
Yes.
that. But obviously that would probably have an incredibly high budget, and Nintendo doesn't seem like people to put money behind
Yeah.
Star Fox right now, unfortunately.
I think that whole like toy stitched look, I think game that we played recently, like It Takes Two, did that quite well. Like it wasn't far off something similar to that. But so I think it's totally doable. Just maybe not quite ready for Nintendo hardware. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would love to see that. Another recent game that I think has a lot of buzz and would do quite well as a kind of serialized drama is Hades. I think if you have the House of Hades and all the characters, they are so strong in the game, but I think you could do a really good like family drama, right? In hell, also animated, because I don't know that Hades would work without that, right? Like it kind of does need to be animated to do so.
Hades is that animated style, like it's very much intrinsic to the nature of those characters, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even without the gameplay stuff of like Zagreus trying to escape, I think you can have that tension between him and Hades, and yeah, I think it would be just a really interesting adaptation. And I'm kind of surprised, honestly, that they haven't announced that they have one in the works, because I feel like that's going to happen any day, frankly. Supergiant have been very successful with that game, so that would be really cool. And then if we're going to go for like real show, like with live action, I think Red Dead Redemption is actually a good shout, because we've had obviously Westworld be quite successful in recent times, and that is this blend of like modern stuff with Western stuff. But I wonder how a straight ahead Western show would go down these days, and I don't know that there's that many.
I would be interested. I'd worry there's not enough of a twist, but could be wrong.
Because like Red Dead is such a pastiche of all those things that came before it, right?
Yeah. I think
definitely.
I think there's a ton of Sony properties, a bit like Last of Us, that could be shoehorned in fairly well. Obviously, we didn't mention there's the Uncharted film coming as well.
Oh, right, with Tom Holland. Yeah,
which I'm also a little skeptical about. I don't know. I feel more confident about Last of Us. Like, I think the Uncharted games are good. I just, as a story, they're not. And I'm currently playing Uncharted 4, which I think story-wise is a huge step up from the other three.
Yeah.
But I'm a little skeptical that, like, random American guy wants to go find treasure is a story that works in 2021, but we'll see what they do with that.
I mean, totally, right? Because the thing is, Indiana Jones is the inspiration for these video games, and so this video game coming out in a post kind of like, I guess in some sense, it's like Indiana Jones has burned and fallen to the ground with that fourth entry, and they're going to do another one. But maybe the world is ready. I don't know.
I just don't think random American person wanting treasure is believable or compelling, or and sure, the adventure could be great and the action will be great, I'm sure, but I'm just like, he's just doing this for treasure, I don't fully buy it.
What's the motivation there, right? Like you gotta kind of build it out, and I think that's kind of probably what they'll do to some degree, but we'll see.
The Sony one I would want to see, and this is one of my favorite Sony stories, is Horizon Zero Dawn, and I think that like all the sci-fi stuff around that
that would cost a lot of fucking money to make.
We're talking big budget, but
I think that probably adapts better to a movie potentially, if we're going to go with budget,
Oh yeah, I should have said I mean like movie, but huge big budget, but I think the last decade sci-fi has been quite popular for sci-fi based movies, and I think it would do quite well, and I think is one of Sony's stronger stories, honestly.
What do you think about a Zelda show? Do you think it's viable? Do you think it'll happen? Do you want it even?
No. Again, it's like, why is Zelda popular? No one's like, Zelda's popular because of its characters and story. It's like, no one's saying that. No one's making that argument.
Zelda has like a big following for its lore, I would say, right? Like that's kind of the thing that people love about it. It's like, how do we connect all these games and that type of stuff?
But it's so... I'm sorry, but like it is very falsely stitched together, whether we like it or not. Like,
yeah, of course it is. 100% it is stitched together falsely, but that's kind of the fun thing about it, right? In a lot of ways.
And to be fair, I can't remember who the writer was for Horizon Zero Dawn, but I remember he was given the blueprint of like, look, we've got this character, we've got these big mechanical dinosaurs in this real world. You now need to build lore that justifies this.
Yes, yeah.
And they started with the look and then went backwards from there, which is very interesting.
It's a very Western kind of design philosophy versus Nintendo, who are like, okay, so before Splatoon was Splatoon, they were all like fucking tofu blocks or whatever, right? Like, they don't give a shit. They're like, is this fun to play, first of all, right? So, yeah.
So I'm not saying randomly stitched together stories can't still be amazing, or we look like
Yeah.
a film like Rogue One.
Look, I fucking love the Zelda lore and the bullshit of people making up links between it. I just find it fun.
Yeah,
But
it's fun. I do enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, we'll see. We've got so many things in the pipeline. So I guess we shall see.
yeah, we shall. Cool.
But that's all we've got time for emails on this show. But as I said at the top of this segment, we need more emails. So please send them to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Or leave us a comment or post in our channel on Discord. Link to that in the description. We'd hugely appreciate it. But catch us again in the third segment when we're going to be talking about some of Nintendo's financials and a little weird game that they've just announced. We will be right back.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the third and final part of today's show. We're talking about a little bit of things here and there. We've got a bit of newsy stuff, new game and things like that Nintendo have announced, but mainly talking about money, boy. We're talking about fucking capitalism. We're talking about making dollar, because that's what Nintendo have been doing. We have their results for their past fiscal year, which has been rather successful, let's say. In the grand scheme of things, I think video games is one of those industries, in this pandemic where things have gone terrible for so many different types of work. Video games are booming. They're doing well. Everyone is at home playing video games, and that's why Nintendo have posted a very high profit margin and a lot of sales going down. I think the big number to focus on, Bally, is hardware-wise, the Nintendo Switch. We are currently at 84.59 million units. And the Switch came out March of 2017, so we are in the 4th year of the system's life cycle. And this is where we are. And
it's
now
tracking faster for the equivalent 4 years of the PlayStation 4 and the Wii.
Yes, it is just going bananas bonkers. And this is one of those things where you look at where they were before and where they are now, and it's just like, you never count Nintendo out, right? Like, you can say they make bad decisions, which they often do and still to this day continue to make. But when it comes down to it, when they fire, they fucking fire hard. And that's what the Switch is doing right now. The big question, Bally, is it's not really a question anymore. They will hit 100 million units. And I think that's pretty safe to say within this next fiscal year, they will pass the 100 million mark, which will put them in the range of the Game Boy. And the PS4, I think, is slightly above that now at like 115, 120 or so. But I kind of wonder, actually, and this is interesting, of like where games are at now and where society is at with them, there is a degree to which more and more people are buying game systems, more and more people are getting into the hobby from a young age, and it's just become a more mainstream thing. Do we just see console numbers grow and grow and grow from this point? Because already the PS5 is off to a ridiculous start, and people can't even find them.
There's definitely an inflation of the market. There's just more people buying and playing video games out there, and obviously populations are increasing. That's obviously a factor. But yeah, I think it's also important to note, and I'd be interested if you know the answer to this question, is that the Switch hasn't had any price reduction yet.
No, it has not.
Do we know how long it took before Sony reduced the price of the PlayStation 4?
So I bought a PS4 Slim in 2016, which was, say, a couple of years, like 3 years or so removed from the launch of those systems. And that was a much cheaper model. And that was, before, that was earlier in the life cycle than the Switch is right now. We got to remember, Nintendo tend to not drop prices. Like, the only significant one I can remember is 3DS, where they were screwed so hard they did such a dramatic price drop so early, because they were bleeding money, basically. But the Wii U never got an official price drop in its entire life. And, you could argue maybe that would have helped. Maybe I don't think it would have, frankly, but I think the real thing to look at, right, is the Switch hasn't got a price drop. But what it does have is the Switch Lite. Right? And I believe 14 million of those 84 are in fact Switch Lites. 69 something are regular Switches. So a decent chunk of the market is the Switch Lite, which is the cheaper model. Obviously it doesn't have the TV output, but there are a lot of people still going out there and buying that particular one, probably for their kids and things like that. And so it calls into question, right? Because we have the quote family of systems that Nintendo likes to use so often with their handheld devices. A new Switch Pro, I think, we've had reports from Bloomberg that it's pretty much confirmed is happening and likely will get announced this year and probably released this year at some point in time.
These are always going to boost them even higher.
It's all going to boost them even higher. Obviously, chip shortages is a factor that plays here that is continuing to ravage every tech industry just completely. My computer, the PS5, Switches, even to some degree, are being sold out and impossible to find because of chip shortages. And a brand new system that gets released this year from Nintendo that is a more powerful version of the Switch, I don't know, that's going to be hard to find as well, I think, because people are kind of thirsting for it at this point. As someone who has a launch day model of the Switch, and this screen slightly scratched, thanks Mario Maker 2, I'm kind of looking like, yeah, I do want a new one of these. I want something that's a bit beefier.
Yeah, my fan sounds a bit rickety-rackety occasionally.
I was going to talk about that. I think it's the last 6 months or a year maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Last 6 months, totally.
Yeah, my fan starts to make noise when I play handheld, and I'm like, can you be quiet, fan? This sounds bad.
It makes noise when I first boot it up out of sleep mode, handheld.
Yeah.
And then randomly mid-game later, it might do it. And
if it's an intense portion of gameplay, it might just rev up.
If I'm not wearing headphones or something, I really hear it. For sure.
Mine kind of just has a constant thing going, and it's not good. I don't like it, so I do feel like here's the thing with this piece of hardware. It's a amazing design for a piece of hardware. I think the hardware itself is shoddy, and that's not
durable in comparison to Game Boy Advance, 3DS.
Yeah, not durable. I think definitely the fans have issues. The Joy-Cons obviously are a fucking disaster. It is the weakest quality from a durability standpoint hardware Nintendo has ever made, while also being the highest quality from a consumer electronics standpoint that Nintendo have ever made, which is like a weird thing.
When we booted up Breath of the Wild for the first time handheld, it was like, my god, this is a high quality product right here.
Totally, yeah, and it was I have my video of me unboxing it for the first time, and I was like, holy shit, this thing is sleek as fuck, man. It's like, whoa, it's just so nice and shiny, and just looks great. And yeah, it's gonna continue to do well. Here's a question about it's been posed by a few people: how well does this do life cycle, right? If we think about its lifetime ending, let's give it generous and say 8 years, right? So let's say we're halfway through the life cycle right now. They put out a new model to refresh it, kind of what Sony and Xbox did with their iterations last gen. Where do we see this going? Obviously, it passes 100 million, but does it reach the golden kind of child of the DS? Does it pass the PS2 at that kind of unreachable 150 million spot?
I think it's really within Nintendo's control. And what I mean by that is, do they want to release a Nintendo Switch 2 while the Nintendo Switch is hot, or do they want to release Nintendo Switch 2 once the Nintendo Switch family is way past it? I think because the Nintendo Switch could come down in price. You might even see price reduction on one of the styles of units versus another, not soon, but in years to come. And by that point, they'll probably be sitting on about 130 million. And Nintendo personally won't care if they beat the DS or the PlayStation 2, they just want to make more money. So if they
Oh yeah.
if they think that's the right time to launch a Nintendo Switch 2, and obviously that new family would start back at zero, a bit like the PlayStation 5 now, then sure, I don't think the Switch will catch those top two. And I think this more plays into, do we think video game console life cycles are getting longer or shorter? And I would probably veer more with shorter potentially. And I think that could be the number one thing that holds it back from reaching the echelons of PS2 and Nintendo DS probably.
It's interesting because I think life cycles have gotten longer over the past couple of generations, right? Like everyone was like, oh boy, the PS3 era has gone on for so long. And yet the PS4 era kind of went on for the same amount of time, but it felt like less time, if you know what I mean, right? Like it definitely was.
Took so long for the big games to come out. It also makes it feel shorter. Like
Sure,
2016 was like when PS4 probably, made its mark.
Yeah, and so I feel like maybe this is just a case of we're old now, and so time feels like it's disappearing faster or something like that. But I mean, when I was younger, it felt like the PS3 and the Wii generation was around for years and years and years, whereas PS4
it felt like our entire school career, more or less.
Exactly, that's exactly what it was, and,
Right.
and that's because you like do so much growing up in that period of time, and like it feels like a long period of time versus when PS4 came out and now PS4 is done. I feel like that was like a couple of years ago, but really it wasn't. And I'm like, oh Jesus, okay, time has just kind of flashed before my eyes. So I don't know if it's just where I am in my life versus how these cycles go, but I have seen that sentiment quite a lot of how long things last for. And it's crazy that we're already like in the fourth year of the Switch, right? It feels like not that long ago that the system launched. So yeah, it's been very successful for them, and I think we're probably going to hit around the 130 million mark. I don't think we'll quite make it to the 150. There's definitely going to be a juice that they get from a Switch Pro model.
Yeah.
But I'm so skeptical about Nintendo and hardware when it comes to pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
I would expect less rather than more in terms of a power boost that this is actually going to give people.
I do think the Switch Pro is going to elongate the Nintendo Switch family for sure. But
Yes.
in 3 years' time, when we're sitting there with our 3-year-old Nintendo Switch Pro, that thing is potentially going to feel so dated, and the frame rates are going to feel so slow in comparison.
I mean, it's gonna feel dated. It already feels dated right now, right? Like it already does. And it felt dated when it launched, right? Because fundamentally, it's still building on architecture of like an era from 2006, right? Like the PS3 is about comparable power-wise to a Switch. Maybe the Switch is slightly more. Who knows? But we're using a piece of hardware that has graphics technology from around that period of time, which is a little wild when you think about it, but that's just the way Nintendo have run their business, and it has clearly been wildly successful, and people don't actually care that much in the mainstream.
Yeah, if the success continues, they will keep trucking on. If there is that dip and people are just like, I'm done with old games, old systems.
Yes.
Which I don't think this is the opinion of people. I think most people don't give two hoots about the power of their system necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I say, if there is a significant dip, Nintendo will have the Switch 2 ready to go production-wise very much sooner than I think we might be anticipating, just depending on the market.
Yeah. And I think so this is an interesting thing that's happened as a result of one of my Animal Crossing videos blowing up and getting like 300,000 views, is I get loads of comments on that video from random people who I imagine are very, very casual people who are like, oh, I couldn't afford a Switch, so I've been playing Wild World, and people who still play 3DS, and people who are like, I've gone back and got New Leaf, and that's what I'm playing right now. And especially in markets where places like Brazil and stuff like that, where it's so fucking expensive to get new stuff. The PS2 was like such a success in that country for so long. And, opening and developing markets, that are starting to get more into consoles and stuff like that. And I feel like there are so many just people that we just don't think about around the world who are not on the current console generation. They're just playing games with whatever they have, and they don't really care about that, right? Graphics and all that stuff doesn't really matter. They're just enjoying playing whatever games they're playing. And I think that's a much bigger portion of the market than we kind of give credit for.
Or there's what about a price drop in China, and all of a sudden it bounces by 20, 30 million overnight?
Yeah.
Not overnight, that's an exaggeration, but like, there are so many market factors that when people look at the best-selling games consoles of all time, it's not a fair list in the way that you think it is. And there's so many factors that come into play with the pricing.
I mean, the reason the PS2 is at 150 million is because it has a fucking DVD player, or it had a DVD player in it.
Right. It's not because it had a stellar lineup, which I think it did have a good lineup.
It did, yeah, for sure.
But it's like the success of Microsoft and Sony are almost entirely dictated by like their third-party output. Like when we think about first-party output, it's a huge driver for Nintendo, but for these other systems, it's a much smaller factor.
For sure, and I think Sony are trying to make it bigger as a part of their like promise to people.
Last
of,
of
like,
Us
why
remake
you should buy.
and
Yeah.
Last of Us HBO and more. Yeah, right, totally.
But you're right, of like Call of Duty and Fortnite carry those consoles more so than any other video game, right? Like GTA 5 and Minecraft, Call of Duty and all those games, those are the real reasons people are buying a console, right?
Yes.
And that's just regular people are going out and playing the games that are big and popular, and if that's the case. And with Nintendo, it's not so much. I mean, Fortnite probably has helped the Switch quite a significant amount, right? Like Minecraft and Fortnite have actually probably done a much bigger job than we give credit for in terms of the number of Switches sold. Because you think about kids at school, what do they talk about? What are they playing with their friends? If you can play on a console and you can get a Switch to do it, and there's cross-play between all these games like Fortnite and Minecraft, that's fine for them, and they will want that.
If you're a kid at school and you've got the choice between a system that plays Uncharted 4 and Fortnite, or a system that plays Animal Crossing and Fortnite, you're going to go with the Animal Crossing one every day.
Absolutely.
Like, it's just a much better proposition.
Totally. So yeah, it's definitely, I do think so much of this success definitely driven by Nintendo's first party, but I don't think we can count out obviously, I don't think indies have that much of a big impact in terms of like the millions and millions of Switches sold.
In these like really grand numbers, I agree. I don't think it's a huge impact, but
they don't. Right. But I think they have a real good grounding to keep people. And I think the software sales is definitely much higher as a result of these indies being successful. Stuff like Stardew, just like millions of copies being sold of Stardew, and that's awesome to see. But yeah, overall, it's not surprising, I think, given what we saw about Animal Crossing. Kind of the software lineup has also been shown off in terms of how much sales have happened there, and I believe Mario Kart still has the throne with 35 mil, Animal Crossing right there in second place in 1 year, come right up behind Mario Kart. Will it get the what do you call it when you go behind someone in Mario Kart, the drift boost slipstream? Can it get the slipstream and boost past, or will it get the blue shell and fucking knock it out? Who knows. We'll see if Nintendo wants to make Mario Kart 9. But yeah, big sales.
Breath of the Wild 2 going to bullet bill right up the pack later.
There we go. Absolutely. We just fucking this entire show, just Mario Kart puns. That's all we know. That's all we do. Okay. So the other thing that Nintendo had a little bit of an announcement for is a product, a tool. Is that a game? I'm not sure if I can call it a game. It's kind of like their version of Dreams.
It's a weird Nintendo thing. It's in the same category as Labo for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is in the mold of Labo. There is, I believe, one of the Labo sets allowed you to do like minor programming thing. Do you remember that thing with like Jimmy Kimmel and Ariana Grande where they made a song on the Labo or something? There was a big video with that.
Oh, I missed that one.
Yeah, but there was, I saw on Twitter, I think John from Nintendo Life tweeted a thing of someone who had built like a shrine from Breath of the Wild with that character in one of the Labo things, and yeah, I think that is where this idea began. We should say the name of the game: Game Builder Garage. I always say garage. I don't know why. It's probably
You're
just
so American. It's ridiculous.
Garage. Yeah, Game Builder Garage, whatever you want to say. Garage. I think this is definitely a much more refined and simplified and also kind of built out as a tool to teach people game design, which I think Nintendo have been interested in for a while now, right? When you think about what Mario Maker did, and And they even put that weird little dungeon thing in Link's Awakening, as kind of light as that was. And obviously Labo stuff was starting to get people to do programming of music and those types of things as well. You had WarioWare DIY back in the day, so it's a thing they've been curious about for a long time. But this seems like a much more fully fledged, almost Dreams-esque piece of software.
Definitely, yeah.
That looks like it has a lot of scope for it. They certainly show the beginning of the trailer they showed has much more simple stuff, but then at the end they show a kind of montage of all the different things that they've made, and nothing looks like amazing, like something you could make in Dreams, but it definitely has a variety and a kind of scope that I didn't necessarily expect from this. So it's really cool to see, and yeah, and I wonder how it does. Any thoughts on this, Bally?
Yeah, it's really cool. We've said it before that, like, with stuff like Ring Fit Plus and Ring Fit Adventure. Yeah, Ring Fit Adventure and, Labo, like, Nintendo's still, like, doing weird stuff, and I'm convinced it is because of the massive success of the Wii, and they are convinced that if they just keep throwing weird stuff at the wall year on year, occasionally stuff sticks. And, Ring Fit Adventure has sold incredibly well. So
it's over 10 million now, right? It's done
like,
super well.
And Labo, I don't think, did particularly well. But, it had its own audience, its own market. And I'm not convinced this is necessarily going to do incredibly well. But again, it has the potential where it could become a viral hit. You never know. Like in a world of TikTok, this is the kind of thing that could suddenly take off for God knows whatever reason,
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool. It does look like a kind of simplified version of Dreams. I think there's a large disparity between the kind of simplistic things it's telling you how the software works versus the fairly, I mean, they are more simplified, but fairly complicated games come the end. I think there's going to be some very more complicated screens in between where, if you want to program the games that you do see at the end, it will be like fairly fully fledged stuff that you have to deal with in order to get it to go.
Much more in depth.
We were having a good laugh that they'd kind of put eyes on all these things.
Like here's your stick, your Joy-Con stick, and
here's a Joy-Con, and you just want the Joy-Con to have a speech bubble that says, "I'm a Joy-Con and I have Joy-Con drift," and it's just ridiculous that everyth's got eyes all of a sudden.
Nintendo's just like making characters out of nothing, basically, right? Yeah, like they did that with Labo as well, and they've done it in the past with the Ring Con, I think, and Ring Fit also does stuff like that, and they love taking inanimate objects like the Wii balance board and making it into a character. That's what they love to do. It's
really weird. I'm skeptical how big it is. The fact that it is coming out like 11th of June, like it's a very quick turnaround. Obviously they'll have been working on this for a while, but I'm interested to see how fully fledged it is. It's just this weird new Nintendo where they announce something and it comes out a month later. It's like, this is very unusual for them. So
I think it depends on the type of game, right? Like something like this, you don't need a build up for. If you think about the way they announced the Mario Kart thing, it was like a month out from that coming out or something, and similar with some of the Labo stuff they've done in the past. Even Paper Mario was a couple of months before it came out, and when it's not a big blockbuster thing, it's kind of more of a surprise. This is a thing now, and it's coming out soon. I think that's kind of what Nintendo like to do these days, with this type of announcement in particular. But yeah, it definitely looks cool. I would like to check out. Yeah, I feel like it might be a $40 thing potentially. I'm not sure from Nintendo's perspective what they see as the value in this, and whether they do and I think this is a thing more of these types of games need to do, is just let people play the stuff even if they don't want to make it. Like, have a free download thing that is, here's the library of stuff that people have made, just play whatever is available. And I think Dreams badly needs it. They did it for so on 3DS they released RPG Maker. RPG Maker is primarily PC thing that you can buy on Steam, and you can use it to make games. I believe To the Moon was made in RPG Maker, and so it is it's a pretty cool, like, if you want to make a video game in an easy way that's a little bit easier than like all these software tools out there, it's an approachable thing, but you can only kind of make one type of game which in it, which is like a top-down pixel art RPG style game. And on 3DS, RPG Maker, I believe, had a free version you could download, which was basically a portal through which you searched other people's games. So if you bought the game, you could make your own, and if you didn't, then you could check out other people's ones. And I don't know why this hasn't become a thing more widely, because I do feel if you do that and give it to free for people to play, there is a chance that people who actually play that will think, oh, maybe I want to make my own thing now, and then go and buy the game. But where we're at the moment is like, oh, dreams, I don't make stuff, that's not what I do, therefore I won't pay attention to it and I won't buy it. And I think it just gives them a bit more of an avenue to widen the market for creation and for people to actually make their own stuff. So I think that would be smart if they did that. I doubt they will, but it could be good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I continue to love weird Nintendo existing, and I don't know if this is that weird, frankly, because they kind of paved the way for them to do this stuff, and it makes sense,
It's weird on its own, but it's very in line with what they've been doing recently.
Yeah, within the context, it definitely makes more sense, and yeah, definitely interested to see what people think about it and check it out at some point. But yeah, that's it's kind of going to do us here for the show today, and that's going to be it. So we are coming up to E3, Bally, soon-ish. Nintendo haven't really announced what they're going to do.
Normally we know by now.
We usually do. Usually there's a video of Reggie doing like a fitness regimen or whatever with like dumbbells and nonsense like that.
That's the most hype thing. Like a month out from E3 and then Nintendo drop a little video of Reggie getting ready. It's like, yes, here we go.
Totally. Which, it's one of those things that with the digital nature of E3 this year and what's going on, they're obviously not going to do something like that, but I imagine that they will say, hey, this is when our thing will be, this is when our announcements will happen, and yeah, it's definitely gonna, I think, given the comments they've made of like how much they want to sell for the next fiscal year, software-wise, Furukawa has made comments to the like of, yes, with a strong software lineup, which makes me think that they are going to have some bangers, hopefully, to talk about, and maybe they lift the curtain to some degree that they weren't able to last year because COVID just waylaid a bunch of projects that may have come out earlier or may have been announced earlier. So we'll obviously be covering that, and we have to kind of work out what we're going to do for it. Probably will be similar to what we've done in the past, where after Nintendo do their thing, we'll do a show and that type of stuff, but we haven't really discussed it yet. And Nintendo need to announce what they're actually doing first, so
right.
So it's in their court. But yes, just wanted to flag that as a thing that is happening soon on the internet. Bally, people can find us all over the place on Twitter and the like. They can find us at TNL Podcast if they want to follow us on the podcast Twitter, where we do announcements and stuff. They can find me at LordNBZ. Where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
Lovely stuff. You can, of course, support the show. If you go head over to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, you get bonus episodes where we talk about video games that are not on Nintendo, which basically means Bally talks about Halo and I talk about Yakuza. It's essentially what that show is. So if that sounds good to you, head on over, and for $1 you can get that bonus show. Bally, we'd like to thank some of our patrons.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my fiance Caroline. Thank you so much all for your support. But yes, thank you to all of our other patrons for your support. It's hugely appreciated. Had a little bump in patrons recently, which is always nice to see. So I hope you're enjoying that extra show we've got with this Nintendo Life. Yeah,
absolutely. Of course, you can find us in various places across the internet. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher. Search This Nintendo Life in your podcasting app of choice, and we should pop up. You can subscribe to us, you can review us, and that would be really nice as well. Give us some star ratings, write us a little review. That would be appreciated. And I think that is pretty much it. We maybe want to give a final plug here for some emails, Bally, because of course the well is running dry. Where can people send those into?
please email thisnintendolife@gmail.com. That is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. We would hugely appreciate the well to be full of water.
Yes. By which we mean your words. Your words flow like rivers unto our souls. Can you tell I was an English major? Why am I saying major? This is the thing about it. I'm just fucking an American at this point. I don't talk in English terms anymore. I'm just I've assimilated myself into the American way of speaking.
Wait, a major? What are you talking about, a major?
A major, yeah, you know, that thing that you do when you go to college.
Oh, right, a major, right.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
What are you talking
Just went completely over your head, Bal. This is how much I've assimilated that you just don't know what the fuck I'm going on about anymore.
We're meant to be a British podcast.
Yes, we are. I is from the UK, all right, mate. This is me. I'm here. Having a well good laugh. Went and voted for London Mayor. That's the thing you do in the
London
UK.
Mayor.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, that is going to close us out for the show. Thank you everybody for listening, for sticking around with us and our nonsense as we talk about video games and things and people and stuff. We'll be back in a couple weeks' time with some more podcasting. Until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you very soon. Bye bye, folks. The musical interludes used on today's show were Florio National Park Day from New Pokémon Snap, copyright Nintendo 2021, and Say No More from Say No More, copyright Studio Fizbin 2021.